Welcome to day 115 of 66 and 26. We're back in the Old Testament book of Job today, starting in chapter 25. And if you've been with us and you've been reading through the book of Job, you know that most of the book of Job up to this point has been a cycle of speeches. Job has three friends who are trying to comfort and challenge him in the midst of his suffering. And so each friend speaks and then Job responds throughout these chapters of Job up to this point. And we get the last of those speeches from those three friends in Bildad in Job 25, who speaks and actually says something at least partially right. Bildad says in Job 25, verse 4, "How then can a man be righteous before God? How can one born of woman be pure?" And if we step back and we look at the broader picture of the entire Bible, we know that this is a really good question. How can someone be righteous before God? We know it's not by works. Paul talks about this pretty strongly in Romans chapter 3, that no one will be declared righteous before God by observing the law, and that is by doing things right. The only way that we are justified before God and that we are righteous before God is by having faith in Jesus Christ and what he has done for us, that God has made us righteous in Jesus. And so Bildad is asking a good question, but Bildad, I think, just like the other friends of Job, is assuming that because Job is suffering, that must mean he's being punished. And if he's being punished, that means he is guilty, when God doesn't work that cleanly. And sometimes the righteous suffer and sometimes the wicked prosper in God's infinite wisdom. We can't understand why. And Job gets to that in these chapters once again as he calls on the unsearchable wisdom and knowledge of God. And so Job in these chapters actually talks about how God is the one who establishes the ways of creation. He covers the face of the full moon, spreading his clouds over it. No one else can do that. He marks out the horizon of the face of the waters. The pillars of the heavens quake. Only God can do this. And Job says, Job 26, verse 14, "And these are but the outer fringes of God's work." He goes on to speak in Job 28 about the unsearchable, unknowable wisdom of God that is beyond human comprehension. Job says, "No bird of prey knows that hidden path." A man could tunnel through rock and find treasures there, but where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? The deep says, "It's not in me." The sea says, "It's not in me." Even destruction and death say, "Only rumor of it has reached our ears." Job says, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. How you find wisdom is only a fear of the Lord. And even that, you're not going to know all the ways of God, only what he truly allows us to understand. In the end, the last chapter we have today, Job 29, Job does something very human, and that is to remember the past, to reminisce. He actually looks back at how I long for the months gone by when people showed respect, when people would bow to him or move out his way when he came to the city gate, and how people smiled at him and loved and adored Job for what he had done and how he served other people. And he longs for that day. Well, we all long for that day. No matter our suffering, we long for that day when God will bring goodness to us. And it actually forces us to, in reminiscing, we actually look forward also to great days ahead. Sometimes that is something God blesses us with here in this life. Sometimes it's not until the resurrection and the final day when God will restore all things, when we'll finally know and experience God's favor forever and ever. For now, we rest in the promise that God is good even when we don't see it all the time.